Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 11th of August of 2025. Today we have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the main battle of the summer of 2025. We're going to talk about the Battle of Donbass. The Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their positions significantly, but the progress on the ground is not the only achievement that the Russians managed to get. The Russians first of all established complete control over the main logistic roads that go from the western part of Ukraine in the direction of the eastern part. During the previous 24 hours, lots of explosions, not just during the previous 24 hours, but most likely during the previous 72 hours. Lots of attacks, lots of explosions were recorded along the main supply lines that Ukrainians use to support their contingent in the eastern part of Ukraine. For example, in this video we can see the consequences of Russian attack on the settlement by the name of Sinelnikova. This is very important logistic hub of the armored forces of Ukraine that is located a bit to the east from the cities of Dnipro and Zaporozhye. As you can see, there are two railways that go from the western part of Ukraine in the eastern direction towards the cities of Pokrovsk, Konstantinovka and Slaviansk. So most likely the Russians attacked the railway station, and as a result of this attack another batch of reinforcements of the armored forces of Ukraine were destroyed. This is once again not the only episode that was recorded during the previous days. For example, this video is coming today from the settlement of Natalivka, which is located to the east of the city of Zaporozhye. If something big was destroyed, as you can see, we can see huge consequences of Russian attack. Smoke screen, most likely some ammo depot was destroyed, or probably some depot with chemical materials was destroyed. Very difficult to understand, but obviously something important was attacked and destroyed by the armored force of the Russian Federation. Another video is coming from the city of Zaporozhye itself. Very important video. Right on the second of this video we can see heavy explosion in the central part of the city, and it's not just a regular explosion. This is a FAB. This is a FAB that was launched by the armored force of the Russian Federation, by their aviation, probably yesterday or the day before yesterday. So we see Russians establish complete control with the aviation, with artillery, with drones and so on. And the most important, as we discussed during the previous video, the Russians began using Geraint drones as probably equipment for distance mining method. Once again, let's take a look at this video. A Russian drone of Geraint type was flying above M30 road that connects the city of Dnipro and the Pokrovsk agglomeration, and we see how Russians were dropping bombs and mines on the main arteria, supply arteria. And in the second part of the video we can see how several light vehicles were ambushed by these mines and were destroyed. And of course the Russians continue bombing and attacking and destroying bridges all over the entire territory between the cities of Dnipro and Zaporozhye and the cities of Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka. So we see that the Russians are entering the most decisive part of this major battle of not just summer of 2025 but of the entire 2025, and we see that the Russians control the initiative completely. During the previous 24 hours, we got lots of reports that Ukrainians continue concentration of their forces along the Bryansk region and along the Sumy region. Most likely during the next 4 or 5 days, and most likely before the beginning of talks between the President of the United States of America and the Russian Federation, Ukrainians will try to carry out another offensive operation with the purpose to enter deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. It is very important for Ukrainians because they understand that this is the only way how they can stop and to ruin the negotiation process. Why? Because the Russians will never continue any talks with Ukraine, with Trump, until they return under their control every single square kilometer of the territory of the Russian Federation. So this is the most important point. And if Ukrainians are able to take under control some territories, some villages, obviously they will do everything they can with the purpose to hold these territories for as long as possible. But another important thing, that it seems that Ukrainians may try to attack the Bryansk in the Bryansk direction, most likely in the most southwestern part, something like this. And another reason of attack in this direction, probably to force Belarus to join the war as well. This can bring probably unpredictable benefits. At least Zelensky believes that it can bring something like this. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. Maybe this is just talk, speculations and rumors about possible Ukraine counterattack. Maybe maybe the Ukrainians are not able to do anything at all, and the only thing they can do is to retreat further and further in the western direction. We will understand this during the next 5 days. And now let's discuss the situation on the ground in the most important direction, the Pokrovsk agglomeration. During the previous days, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly, and we colored the territory once again. This stage of Russian offensive, the current stage of Russian offensive operation in this direction, started around on the 8th of August of 2025. I would like to take a look at the situation in this area once again since the beginning of the 8th of August for the better understanding of the situation. So once again, this is the situation on the ground by the end of the 8th of August of 2025. We chose this date for the analysis because exactly in this date, by the morning of the 8th of August, we got first report that rumors say a Russian sabotage reconnaissance group entered the outskirts of Zolotoy Kolodez near Dobropillia. That update was published by the 8th of August, and according to these updates, Russians entered the village of Zolotoy Kolodez by the end of the 7th of August. So this is basically the beginning of Russian sabotage and reconnaissance breakthrough that the Russians managed to carry out during the previous 4 days. By the end of the 9th of August, we added additional changes on the ground, more precisely mappers, different mappers, pro-Ukrainian mappers, pro-Russian mappers, and neutral mappers adjusted their maps, and all adjustments were taking place exactly in the northern direction. So the Russians obviously chose this direction for further offensive operation and for major offensive operation. And the first significant update of the map took place by the end of the 10th of August, because by the end of the 10th of August we got additional updates that the Russians managed to improve their positions, and this time the all updates were published and updated by very reliable mappers like pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian resources. So this is the situation on the ground by the end of the 10th of August of 2025, and this is exactly what we were discussing yesterday. And today we got additional changes, and the changes are significant. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions further in the northern, northwestern, northeastern directions, and the most important, the Russians managed to improve their positions, those positions that they were able to take under control since 8th or 7th of August of 2025. So let's discuss all these changes in details. First of all, according to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the vicinity of the settlement of Rodinska. The Russians managed to cut physically the road TO515 and to get for as close as possible to the mine of Vadyanska. This is very important stronghold. If Russians take this stronghold under complete control, these can be used as a very powerful stronghold and flank protection before Russians are able to secure this territory completely. Furthermore, according to pro-Russian resources, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians finished the battle for the settlement of Dorozhny and improved their positions further in the northwestern direction along the railways. And here we got another very important update that was published by neutral mappers. According to them, the Russians managed to take under control the village of Dorozhny and to advance further in the northwestern direction and to secure the settlement of Novodonbass. We are waiting for confirmation of this progress because this is very important. If this confirmation is being confirmed by any, let's say, by geolocation, or at least by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, this will mean that the settlement of Rodinske and Belitska, the settlement of Belitska, would be caught in pincers from the south and from the north, and that Ukrainians who are currently located in this village were cut from supply and support from the mainland. The Ukrainians most likely from this area still have possibilities to, let's say, to support their contingent from the western direction through the mine of Beletska, but the northern road and the southern road were cut. Furthermore, according to different mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions further in the northern direction and to get the village of Zolotoy Kolodez. The Russians began the process of concentrating of their troops in this area, and with the purpose to get a critical mass And then with the use of this critical mass, the Russians may try to attack further in the northern direction with the purpose to establish physical control over the settlement of Zolotoy Kolodys and to force the Ukrainians to fall back. At the same time, the Russians began turning their offensive operation of sabotage and reconnaissance group in the eastern direction with the purpose to outflank the settlements of Shakhovo, Toretsk, Sofiyevka and Volodymyrovka. So this is the situation in the northeastern part of the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. As you can see, the Russians control the initiative completely in their hands, and currently we understand that the main problem that the Ukrainians are suffering right now is a shortage of manpower. Basically, the Ukrainians have huge problems with this. And today we got a very interesting article published by Ukrainians. According to them, since the beginning of 2025, more than 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers left their positions. Imagine yourself, 100,000 soldiers left their positions according to official statistics that was provided by the Ukrainian authorities. So, and this number is very huge. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that according to Ukrainian authorities, every single month, Ukrainians are able to mobilize up to 30,000 soldiers. So, which means that since the beginning of 2025, let's take just 7 months, Ukrainians managed to mobilize 200 and let's say 10,000 soldiers. 100 soldiers left their positions, which means that Ukrainians have only 110,000 soldiers just of this year. And of course, if we start calculating losses, wounded soldiers, it seems that Ukrainians have zero balance, so nothing left of the mobilization process of 2025. Furthermore, the Russians launched another offensive operation, but this time the Russians are trying to advance through the fields in the area of the villages of Poltavka, Popov Yar, Rusin Yar, and the settlement of Stepanovka. We are waiting for additional updates in this area. Several pro-Russian resources have already updated their maps from this direction, and we have one geolocation that confirms Russian progress on the ground. This is also a very important direction, and if we summarize Russian offensive in the area of Dobropillia and this Russian offensive operation, we see that currently the armored forces of the Russian Federation are trying to outflank and to take in pincers another dense network of the fortifications of the armored forces of Ukraine that is currently located between the villages of Shakhovo, Vladimirovka, Sofiyevka, Toretsk, Tarskoye, Krasny Kut. So this is the task. This is exactly the main task of the armored forces of the Russian Federation at this stage of the current major battle with the Ukrainian armored forces, to take under complete control this territory. If the Russians are able to do this, we can start talking about complete collapse of Ukrainian defense. This is going to be a very huge and very strong position of the armored forces of the Russian Federation that could be used for further advance in the northern, northeastern directions, and of course in the northwestern directions. So anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but nothing good Ukrainians should expect from this breakthrough. As for the city of Pokrovsk itself, during the previous 24 hours, not much updates were recorded. Some changes on the ground in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Leontovichi. The Russians secured the settlement completely, as you can see according to information we have. Furthermore, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the most southern part of the city as well, but without, as you can see, any changes and any attacks, any progress on the ground in the central part. So it seems that the Russians are stabilizing the situation. Either we are going to receive additional updates in coming days, or we are not going to see anything, and the Russians will probably focus their attention to the northeastern part. Now let's talk about the city of Konstantinovka. During the previous 24 hours, another batch of updates, very important updates, were recorded. And first, let's talk about the southern part of this direction, about the Kliban-Byksky pocket. Today, pro-Ukrainian resources confirmed that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to take under complete control the settlement of Alexandra Kalinova. We adjusted the map in this area several weeks ago based on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and based on different videos that were published, but just today the Ukrainian sources confirmed this information as well. Furthermore, we got very important geolocation from the village of Katerinovka that was published by the Russian sources. In this video, we can see how 4 Ukrainian soldiers were trying to counterattack Russian positions in the central part, in the eastern part of the village. The Ukrainians were trying to take a basement under control and they were dropping grenades, but this Russian soldier most likely called for help, and several Russian FPV drones attacked Ukrainian soldiers, assault soldiers, and they were destroyed. So this video confirms strong control over the central part by the armored force of the Russian Federation. Another important update was published by several pro-Ukrainian resources. According to this report, several hundreds of the armored forces of Ukrainian soldiers were caught in cauldron on the territory of the village of Kliban-Bek without any chances for evacuation, and that Ukrainians began surrendering. Another important video is coming from the area of the Kliban-Bytske water reservoir itself. Very important video. And here we can see this video was geolocated. Here we can see a boat. Here we can see a boat on the territory of this lake. And here we can see how Russians were attacking this boat with FPV drone. This is very important video that confirms that the armed forces of the Russian Federation established complete FPV drone artillery control, not just over the main supply lines that Ukrainians used to evacuate their soldiers. We're talking about this line and we are talking about this line. We see that currently the Russians also established complete control, FPV drone control over the lake itself. Now Ukrainians lost complete any possibilities for evacuation. It seems that the pocket will collapse very soon, and most likely we are going to see lots of prisoners of war captured by the armored forces of the Russian Federation. Pro-Russian resources at the same time continue reports that the Russians are advancing in the northern direction, and that indeed the village of Sherbinovka was completely secured and taken by the Russians in this area. As for the southeastern flank of the Konstantinovka agglomeration, probably the most important update was published by neutral mappers. According to them, the armored forces of the Russian Federation managed to take under complete control dense network of fortifications that are located to the south of Alexandra Shultina. So this territory was secured by the Russians, which means that in coming days, most likely the armored forces of Ukraine would be forced to fall back from Alexandra Kalinova in the northwestern directions towards the city of Konstantinovka itself. If Ukrainians abandon their positions from Alexandra Shultina, this means that most likely Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this pocket as well. Otherwise, the contingent of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of this pocket would be caught in cauldron by the Russians as well, without any chances for evacuation. Furthermore, several pro-Russian mappers reported that today, by the end of the 11th of August of 2025, the Russians also managed to establish complete control over the village of Prityechina. And very interesting article was published by pro-Russian resource who is familiar with the situation. According to this author, he take place in battles for Prityechina, Stupachki, so he is operating in this direction. And today he told us that all civilians remaining in the city, he made a small announcement that all civilians remaining in the city should urgently prepare for the start of urban fighting. According to him, it seems that the battle for the city of Konstantinovka may start in coming hours, not even weeks or days. So let's wait and see what is going to happen. But obviously both the Russians and the Ukrainians, both Zelensky and Putin, will try to get as strong as possible cards before the beginning of Alaska summit. And Donald Trump understands this, and the Western countries understand this, and obviously we believe that something huge is going to happen, and most likely Ukrainians are will try to become authors of this something. As for the Sivas direction, the Russians continue tightening the news around Ukraine positions, and the Russians continue offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded in the area of the settlement of Kolodezi. The Russians managed to improve their positions and to advance deep inside of the village. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian soldiers on the territory of the settlement of its eastern part. It seems that the entire village either under complete Russian control or about to be taken. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but after the village of Kolodezi, the Russians will continue offensive towards the settlement of Stavki. Currently, there are still very heavy clashes for the village of Zarechna. The Russians introduced additional forces in this direction. There are very heavy clashes, mainly all over the entire territory of the settlement. A lot of sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armored forces of the Russian Federation managed to infiltrate the settlement. The Ukrainians are trying to stabilize the situation, but due to the shortage of the manpower, most likely they will not be able to do this. The most important thing from this direction is coming from the Serebrenko forest. The Russians continue offensive and during the previous 24 hours once again managed to improve their positions. The Serebrenko forest is about to completely fall in Russian hands. This is probably the most difficult direction since the beginning of the special military operation, but a turning point in the battle for the forest took place probably a week ago, when the Russians launched their major offensive operation, when the Ukrainians removed several brigades from this direction with the purpose to stabilize the situation around the city of Pokrovsk. The Russians used that opportunity and began advancing. According to different mappers, the Russians are tasked to get the village of Dobrovo from the north and to cross the river of Seversky Donetsk from the north and to attack the same village from the east. If the Russians are able to establish complete control over the settlement of Dronica, this can lead to the situation that the gates to the city of Seversk will be open from the north, from the northeast, east, and from the south and from the southeast. It seems that the Russians are planning to begin several major battles at the same time: the city of Pokrovsk, the city of Konstantinovka, the city of Seversk, the city of Slaviansk, the city of Liman, and of course the city of Kupiansk. And most likely everybody in the world understands that Ukrainians don't have enough of manpower to stabilize the situation along every single town and city that we've just discussed. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.